An investment in knowledge pays the best interest, says Benjamin Franklin. A warm good evening to one and all. I am Nina, deemed it as my esteemed privilege to welcome you all today on the 65th talk of the Intersociety weekly webinar series, jointly organized by IEEE Kerala section, the Institution of Engineers Kerala State Centre, Internet Society Trivandrum Chapter, Computer Society of India Trivandrum Chapter, Project Management Institute Kerala Chapter, Vakkom Moulavi Foundation Trust Trivandrum, IEEE EMBS Kerala Chapter, and IEEE Life Member Affinity Group Kerala Chapter. We have successfully coordinated 64 talk series with enormous speakers, and the response we've been receiving is overwhelming. With 300 registrations from 15 countries spread across the continents, today's talk is no exception. The evolution of artificial intelligence has made it possible for any project manager willing to invest the time to understand the potential of this actionable information and to develop the confidence in the power of this AI to become an extraordinary soothsayer. Can AI empower everyday project managers to be able to defeat the nemesis of project uncertainty? The answer is yes. Today, on our 65th talk, we are extremely delighted to have with us Dr. Lee R. Lambert, the PMP guru and founder of Project Management Professional Certification, sharing his insights on artificial intelligence creates actionable information. Are you ready to use it? Before we begin, I'd like to kindly bring your attention to the feedback link that will be provided during the session. Kindly fill the form and let us know your opinion, and please don't hesitate to mention if there is any requirement for the certificate of attendance. You may also raise your queries regarding the session in the chat box, which will be read out at the end of the discussion. Now, moving on to the session formally, I invite Ms. Sharon Susan Jacob, IEEE EMBS volunteer, to welcome the virtual gathering. Sharon, please.
Thank you, Amina. Am I audible?
Yes, Sharon, you're audible.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I'm indeed very glad to welcome most esteemed dignitaries around the world to this virtual platform. I welcome all the international
take over and conclude. Amina. Amina?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you can take over and pass on to give a welcome and pass on to Krishna Kumar for the introduction, please.
Now I invite Dr. T.I. Krishna Kumar, representing Project Management Institute, to introduce our illustrious speaker. Sir, please.
Thank you, and hope I'm audible too, right?
Yes, you're audible.
Yeah. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from people attending from different geographies. As the MC said, we have around 300 registrations from 15 countries. So we will be having different geographies. It will be there. It will be really my honor and a privilege to introduce Dr. Lee R. Lambert, who is a PMP and a PMI Fellow. Lee R. Lambert is considered as throughout the world as one of the project management thought leaders. He has been spreading the PM word for over the 50 years and was one of the founders of PMP. Lee has been recognized by the Project Management Institute as one of the only 70 PMI Fellows across the world. The PMI Fellow Award recognizes and honors members who have made sustained and significant contributions to the project management profession over a decade. He brings a real world message for the people who are hoping to excel in the role of managing projects. His unique and humorous style creates enjoyable and productive learning environment. Lambert has implemented 4 enterprise-wide project management information systems, and his work in developing high-performance team has been judged as a miracle. He has prepared and delivered the user training to thousands of employees at AT&T, IBM, General Electric, Microsoft, and countless others. His value-add consulting and training has been instrumental in creating successful PMOs to drive rapid implementation. He has provided public training programs for more than 50,000 professionals in 23 countries. Lee loves sharing his experience and knowledge, and he is currently the Vice President Knowledge Transfer for Roeder Consulting, Cleveland, Ohio. Thank you, Lee, for supporting us by sharing the knowledge in this great Intersociety webinar. Dear Lee, welcome, and the stage is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I love that introduction. It's sadly, though, it's taken up too much of our time. We should have gone with a brief one. Say, here's Lee. So now that we're back online, I apologize for that technical problem. It's funny that the very topic we're talking about, artificial intelligence, has resulted in our getting started a little bit late. So we're going to overcome that. I am so honored to be involved in this Intersociety weekly program. I was just telling them that one of these a week is an incredible accomplishment and pays dividends to all of the members who attempt to tune in. So this is kind of an exciting topic for me. I'm not a statistician. I've taken this idea of artificial intelligence and try to apply it to the world of project management in a bit more pragmatic way than I think some of my peers think of it. So this is what I want to talk about today. I've been given the name, among other names that people call me, I've been given the name of a pragmatic evangelist. So an evangelist I am. For project management, I spread the word throughout the world. I look for every opportunity I can to share my experience and my knowledge with those people who are coming up the ranks, so to speak. And so this is another opportunity. When I saw this possibility and this topic, I was actually quite excited because I don't think anybody is spending time talking about the real world of applications of artificial intelligence. I'm not talking about creating a program that will allow you to beat the world chess champion like IBM did. I'm not talking about the idea of creating such an integrated data set that you no longer need people, that we can predict what people are going to do and how they're going to do it. I want to look at it from the standpoint of a real project manager. Now, I started my project management career in about 1966. Now, that's, I without a doubt know that that's before some of you were born. So I've been doing it a long time. And one of the things that I learned real early is I don't really like work. I'm not a big fan of work. And what I learned early is that if I can get my hands on the right information, it significantly reduces the amount of work that I have to do. So there's a real good reason why artificial intelligence has caught on and has become sort of the buzzword of late. They change. You know, there's always a new buzzword, a new concept. There's earned value, there's lean, there's agile. There's always something new coming up that's going to make the job of a project manager easier, more successful, and so on. But at the end of the day, what I found is it really doesn't matter if you don't know how to use what you have in the way of artificial intelligence. So I equated, described by the title of this little talk, that artificial intelligence must create actionable information. So if you think about it in that context, what you need to realize as we move through this program today is that if I don't use the artificial intelligence to enhance my ability to successfully achieve objectives and motivate and inspire team members, then I'm not sure how valuable that is. And so that's where I want to start my discussion today. Next slide, please. if you look at this next slide, this is what I fear. Again, having been in it for a long time, I've gotten to see all these trends and all these new ideas and everything that has been coming up over the last 50 years. And what I see has happened, and it's continuing to happen, and if we're not careful, it will bury us, is that we now have, because of automation, because of computerization, because of the intelligence levels of, quote, machines, we are now in a position where, unlike when I started in the 60s and 70s, if I wanted to find information that supported a decision that would impact the project, I had to roll up my sleeves and go find it. I had to go prepare it. I had to dig into multitudes of information to find what I needed. Now I can just push a button and say print, and the next thing you know, I've got more darn information than I know what to do with. So it's artificial in that it's created through machinery as opposed to through my intellectual property. But the fact of the matter is, if it doesn't add value to my ability to make decisions, it becomes questionable as to how much time do I want to spend creating this mountain of data. So your job as a project manager, as a project support specialist, you don't have to be the manager to capitalize on this capability. So your job is to convert artificial intelligence into actionable information that will then support the decision making. One of the most critical roles that a project manager plays is acting upon decision support information. And so we've got to understand now what this goes back to, and I can't go too much forward without talking about this, is that this goes back to the plan that we have initiated on the project. Here's the first place that artificial intelligence begins to create a basis for which you can develop more meaningful, more realistic plans as we move forward. So let's look at one item in that regard, is that we can capture data from prior projects that give us an indication of what went right, what went wrong, and as we plan similar projects, we can then incorporate that knowledge into the planning process. And this can be extrapolated to even represent productivity numbers for individual contributors. Because one of the big problems we have in creating a realistic, I'm not going to say accurate, because if it's accurate, it wouldn't be an estimate, creating realistic estimates of how long things will take to get done. Well, in order to do that, we have to make resource assumptions. And all of those resources are varying categories with varying productivity rates. And so when we put them into the project plan, we have to extrapolate the data that is driven out by the historical information of that particular resource. So when we do that and we see that utilizing resource A with the productivity rate that's been identified over the past 5 projects that he or she has worked on, we now can look at the number that comes out and say with some confidence, that number's not a good estimate. We haven't taken into account the productivity rate, the demonstrated productivity rate of individuals on past projects, and we need to do that to affect the real estimate. Now, remember, the reason we want a realistic estimate is that's going to become the basis for all things in the future relative to statusing, analysis, projections, risk management. You can name off almost anything that is involved in the process of executing a project, and you will discover that historical information has a key role to play in the reliability of our plan. So we look at that from that perspective, and if we can incorporate learned behavior based on past projects, not arbitrarily, not we think this is it, we maybe this is it. Now with artificial intelligence, we can nail it down. We can say, you know, you can tell me it takes 8 hours to do task A, but if I look back at how many task A's you've done in the past, and the average time it's taken is 12 hours, then why would I ever put 8 hours into the plan? So you see what happens is, without capitalizing on the artificial intelligence that's been recorded over time, I create, before I've even started the project, a schedule or an estimate that I'm already behind on. And so we've got to take advantage of that from the planning process. I think we rely heavily on individual input based on their confidence and their ability to do the task that we've asked them to do. And I honor that. I don't want to say you don't know what you're talking about. I do want to say, but would you consider, over the past 5 projects you worked on, that the rate of 8 hours for that task is really closer to 14 or 15 or whatever it is. And that's what we want to put in the plan. We want the plan to be realistic. Now, here's the problem we have. This is a problem that all the proponents of artificial intelligence tend to turn their head and look the other way. If you don't like the answer you get by applying artificial intelligence data to your planning process, then you look the other way and you ignore it and you create a plan that you're already behind schedule or behind the estimates. So we've got to get our decision makers, our high-level decision makers, to agree that they will consider seriously the output of artificial intelligence. It's machine-driven, but it's machine-driven based on factual information from prior projects. So let's say that we do get that buy-in from management. Okay. So instead of 8 hours, it's 14 hours. Let's put that in the plan. Well, so what happens is we create a more realistic plan. You'll never hear me. I'm in my 55th year of working in project management, and you will have never heard me, nor will you ever hear me, say that today's estimate is accurate. It just doesn't work that way. There's never been a project, and believe me, I've worked on hundreds of them. There's never been a project that comes in exactly like it went out in terms of plan. That's because the real world doesn't work that way. In the world that we deal in, new information is constantly coming into the process, new people, new objectives, new requirements in terms of quality. And so what we want to have is a plan that becomes a realistic base to then consider and, to the extent necessary, implement changes. So I'll get back to that change idea in a couple of minutes. But let me tell you this. When it comes to the idea of using artificial intelligence to identify actionable information, the area that I believe has the highest potential return is that area that we refer to kind of flippantly sometimes as risk management. This is an area that artificial intelligence can deliver incredibly important, actionable information. It's kind of ironic that I'm with you today, because I had dinner on Saturday night with my good friend, Dr. Prasad Kadukla from up in Chicago. He came down, and we've been trying to do that dinner for a couple of years. And so we got together, and some of my friends said, well, how'd dinner go? And I said, well, once it gone well. We were there for 4 hours. And so guess what we were talking about? We were talking about artificial intelligence, and more specifically, actionable information when it comes to risk management. Now Prasad he's an artist when it comes to this. He's written numerous books. He's a PMI Fellow. This guy knows what he's doing, and he's from India. So how can you go wrong? And so we were talking about that, and one of the things that he's done, which I think is important, is that he's in the process of finishing some writings and some case studies and some modules of interaction based on risk that are going to be incredibly useful to the project manager, who has the ability to withdraw artificial intelligence out of the project plan, out of the preparation we put into execution, and plug that data, that quote raw data, into a simulation and find out what the impact on the project is. Oh my goodness, can you imagine? I mean, I would have given my right arm for something like that in the old General Electric days. We had to do guesswork. We would run 4 or 5 or 6 simulations. And by the way, these weren't automated. These were done manually with a thing that some of you may not be aware of. We used to have a tool that was called paper and pencil. And calculators, and we would run these simulations. We didn't call them anything as fancy as simulations, but we would run these trials and decide, well, if we do this, this is what happens. If we do that, that's what happens. Now, take that thought process and put it in place on a current project that you're working on, and that you're not sure about what the impact of a risk event occurring might be on your project. Well, with artificial intelligence, I can begin to input data conditions, run the simulation, and be able to see very quickly what the impact of decision A, decision B, decision C would be on my project. So what happens is we find that we're in a position to, rather than sort of by the seat of our pants. Now, I will admit, I will never not admit this, that experience is a heck of a good teacher. And so even if the simulation seems to be all that we hoped it would be, there still may be times when your experience says, yeah, you know, I understand what the simulation's telling me, but I've done enough of these projects that I know that this is what's really going to happen. So I want to make sure you recognize, and I don't think all the, I'm going to call them cultists, the data cultists that believe that you can run the world without leaving your computer screen, that I want to make sure we understand that at the end of the day, your real world hands-on experience will override simulations. Now, hopefully we can combine the two to reach a decision that's most beneficial for the project and the organization. But we're not doing simulation for the sake of doing simulation. We're doing it for the sake of identifying decision support information. And as Prasad and I talked on Saturday night, we both became a bit excited about the potential. Now, he's not nearly as old as I am, but he's got plenty of experience in project management. He and I have taught courses around the world for the past 20 years. So we've run into every potential situation and learned greatly from that. So keep that in mind as you look at your computer capacity, and understand that you have to create a reasonable plan in order to take advantage of these simulations. A bad plan creates bad information. So we're all smart enough to know that. We are also all smart enough to know that good planning takes time. So we've got to devote enough time front end to make that happen. So let me give you, and somebody, by the way, during the pandemic, I capitalized on the pandemic and began to do a multitude of Zoom meeting webinars. In fact, I did a total of 31 one-hour webinars for various PMI contingencies in India, and about another 30 from other locations around the world. And so I know people are up to speed on the idea, but I want to caution you. I really do, because just because it looks easy doesn't make it accurate, doesn't make it realistic. So some of you have heard this story, but I cannot refuse to tell it because it says it all. When I went to work for the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory in the state of Washington here in the U.S., they stole me away from GE. They enticed me, they bribed me, however you want to say it, to come to the national laboratory to implement project management. Now, that had never been done in a national laboratory setting. So I looked at it as an opportunity. Little did they know I probably would have come for free, but I took that role on. So I got there late in August of 1977. And as I got there and started my new position, this national lab, it wasn't a big lab. I think their budget at the time in 77 was $300 or $400 million a year, doing technical research, nuclear oriented in many cases. And so when I got there, they said, in addition to implementing project management, as if that wasn't enough, they said, we also want you to be the liaison between the laboratory and the Department of Energy Control Office, which was downtown. We're out on the site of the reactors and the various components that we needed to do our work. But we want you to deliver the report down to the main office every month. So I wasn't too excited about it. I wasn't in the deal, but what am I going to do? So I said, okay, that's fine. So as we get towards the end of the month, when the report's due out, I called my admin and I said, listen, we need to go down to the control office and deliver the monthly report. Would you pull that together for me? And we'll take that down to the National Laboratory Control Office tomorrow. He said, okay, that's fine. So first thing in the morning, here he comes in my office. Now, you'll get this in 1977, but he comes into my office with the report, and it's on a hand truck. If you've ever moved furniture, you know what a hand truck is. So it's on a hand truck, and it's about 5 feet tall. And he rolls this into my office, and I looked at him and with a puzzled look on my face to be sure. And I said, what in the world is that? And he said, that's the monthly report, Lee. He said, we've been delivering this report for the past 3 months, and the DOE control officer absolutely loves it. Absolutely loves it. And so I said, okay, but that's ridiculous. This is a $300-400 million lab. That 5 foot tall report, that's $1 billion report, not a $100 million report. And I said, but I'm committed. So we headed for the downtown control office. Okay. So I get there, we roll that baby into the control office. I hadn't met the guy named Frank Pennington's his name. Nice guy, good old boy, drives a pickup truck, has a gun rack in the back and fishing poles, and he's a good old boy. Okay, so we did our introductions and the niceties that you do when you haven't met somebody that's important like that. And then once we got done with that, I drew his attention to the report, and I said, Frank, what is that? And he said, well, Lee, that's the monthly report. You brought it. You should know what it is. I said, no, I know what it is. I guess I want to know why it is. Why is it that big? That's ridiculous. There's no way your people are using all that information. He said, oh, Lee, you're so wrong. You're so wrong. He said, I have 12 project control officers that manage all the various components of the laboratory, technical departments of the laboratory, and my guys swear by this report. They've told me several times that without this report, they don't believe they'd be able to do their job very effectively. So no, we're using it. And in fact, I said, now that you've mentioned it, we're really actually thinking about asking for more. I said, more? That's nuts. You're not getting more. In fact, I hope you're going to get less. I said, I'd like to make a bet with you. I'd like to bet you that I can prove to you that you're not using all this information. I mean, we're generating all this information every month, and it's not getting used. I can guarantee it. I'll bet you I can prove it. He said, I'll tell you what, if you can prove we're not using it, I'll let you raise the level of detail 1. Now, we were reporting at the 7th level of a WPS, okay? That's pretty deep. And so he's offering to raise that level of detail if I can prove we're not using it. So we shook hands, we had a deal. So I went back, and so come October, now in October, I get to prepare the report. I just had to deliver it in September, or in August, sorry. So in September, I get to prepare the report. So, but I can't change it because I haven't proven anything yet. So it's still 5 foot tall, but what I did was I took that 5 foot tall report and salted it, put some things in it that if anyone was truly reading the report, there's a high probability that my phone's going to be ringing. Okay, so we put that in there and sent it on down to the control office. Nothing, not a word. So the next month, October, because I've proven they're not reading it, or I'd have gotten a call, we raised the level 1. So it goes from 7 levels to 6 levels. It goes from 5 feet to 3 feet. And once again, I salt it with some information that will definitely cause a phone call. Send it on down, nothing. Well, now I'm kind of getting tired of the process. So in the next month, I want to end it, okay? So in the next month, we raise it up. Now we're at the 5th level, and now we're at about 18 inches in height for the report. And I want to get it over with. So this time I salted as before, but this time I salted with some things about Frank's family, primarily his mother and sister. And so I salted and sent it on down. It hadn't been downtown for more than 10, 15 minutes at the most, and my phone starts ringing. Now, in 1977, I'm sorry to say, we didn't have a caller ID, so you had to answer to find out who the heck it was. But I knew who it was, and so I answered. I said, "Hey, Frank, what's up?" He said, "I'll tell you what's up, Lee." And he had a bit of anger. You could sense it in his voice. He said, I don't know. He said, "You're a new guy on the block, Lee." And he said, "I don't know what you think you're pulling here. I don't think you understand that you're not going to get away with this." I said, what do you mean I'm not going to get away with this? And he said, "Well, the report's been sitting on my desk for about 10 minutes. And I've been sitting here looking at it and looking at it and watching it. And now I've got a question for you." He said, "Didn't this report used to be a lot thicker?" He still hadn't read it. And so when we left, when I left in 1981 to come here to Columbus, Ohio to start a new project management division, we were reporting to the DOE in a 24-page report. So it had gone from 5 feet to 24 pages. And it provided them more than adequate decision support information. It made it possible to deliver a report that was focused on specific issues. Now, what you have to remember, and this is one of the beauties of artificial intelligence, is that you're not excluding information. You're not developing it. That's all captured in the machinery, if you will, so that if you get to the analysis process and you see some information that's missing that would help you make a more informed decision, well, you go back to the artificial intelligence mountain, if you will, and find that, pull it out, and use that to support your decision. All I'm saying is, if you're going to use artificial intelligence, use it wisely. Too much of anything is not a good thing. So, and unfortunately, many project managers that I run into today, and I've had to counsel lots of them, is I have to remind them that if a little's good, then a lot isn't better. So we have to focus the AI to create the AI actionable information, to support the decisions. And if you do this effectively, you will look like a soothsayer. You will look like you're able to see into the future and see what is going to happen on the project and make decisions that avoid that or mitigate the impacts of that happening. And so now you see we've circled back to risk management again. This is where the risk management people, now you can get a risk management credential, PMI has them, lots of people have them. There's a guy named Carl Pritchard who's a master of risk management. He can show you how to do that. But the fact of the matter is, risk management is about avoiding impacts in the future, not avoiding impacts now. Now's already happened. So if we can look at it from that standpoint, then utilizing artificial intelligence creates the ability to do that. And we can apply the other factors. And one of the things in risk management that I use, again, I got a million sayings and they've proven to be pretty accurate. But one that I use all the time in analysis, in analyzing someone else's analysis, is that I point out to them, whatever has happened in the past will continue to happen in the future unless someone does something about it. And people, listen, you are the ones that have to do something about it. If you allow it to continue to happen and it has a negative effect, you gotta mitigate that. You've got to balance that. If it continues to happen and it's a good thing, I think we've converted that to something called positive risk, then we want to make sure that it continues to happen and we facilitate that process. So your role as a project manager, I think you need to understand you're not a data pusher. You're not a play with the numbers kind of person. What you are is a decision maker that bases your decisions on actionable information, which is now, because of artificial intelligence, is available more readily. It's available in a more timely way, and it provides you with what you need to make your decisions the most impactful on the process. Now, I've said a million times, if I had available to me the artificial intelligence that you have available to you, I would own the project management world. I would have looked like an incredible genius for some of the things I was able to do. But I didn't. It was a lot of manual manipulation, very delayed, very error-filled. Most of those issues have been resolved, and it appears from what I watched taking place around the world is that's going to get nothing but better, faster, and, quote, cheaper. There's tons of PPMs, project portfolio management capabilities out there. I've had a chance to work directly with one in Dublin, Ireland, from a company called Chorus Systems. And I'm not trying to sell you Chorus Systems. I just happen to have seen their product, and my gosh, it's a miracle for me. I mean, I would have loved to have available. So, and there's dozens of them out there. I see them on LinkedIn on advertisements all the time. So I think we really need to understand how this process all works. And if you do, then you intellectually have to engage. It doesn't do it for you. The artificial intelligence doesn't do it for you. It provides what you need to do it. Okay. So let's leave this slide. Give me the next slide, please. If there's questions at the end, we can certainly encourage you to ask those questions. Now, here's a bad example, because I think for every good example, we could probably dredge up a bad example. This one happens to be related to automated software that will create and incorporate management concepts to developing an integrated logic network critical path schedule. Okay? One of my biggest complaints as I go around the world looking at, asking people about their projects, is that there are far too few of projects that can show me a well-developed critical path schedule. Now just think for a second before I go on. If you don't have a critical path schedule, how are you going to know if a slippage in any one work package is going to be acceptable and not impact the delivery date or not impact the resource distribution curve? How are you going to know that? Well, you're not. You're not. And people who think they can create schedules that will add value using spreadsheets or using bar charts, wake up, people. One of the very first tools that ever was created for project management was the project schedule, the capability to create a critical path schedule. Now remember, when I say critical path, the implication is there's no room for movement without some offsetting decision being made. Well, generally speaking, 20 to 30% at a high number of all the work packages on a project are on the critical path. That means the other 70 to 80% of the work packages have some flexibility in how they get done in terms of timing, resource allocation, even budgets. And so that's another reason to have a critical path schedule, not just for the critical path. So now that I've explained that, and you all know that, but you still don't do it for some reason, let's look at a software package that commands the market share in the United States for sure, and I suspect probably throughout the world. They have captured 60 to 70% of the market share for generating critical path schedules for projects, large or small, short or long. They are the market leader. So about well, it's about 10 years ago now. I'm surprised I remember. I was contacted by the CIO of Microsoft. Okay, now the CIO of Microsoft, that's a pretty heady position. So when he called, the first time he called, I didn't answer the phone because I didn't know who it was. I was busy. So he called again, and I answered the phone. And he said, listen, he said, I've been trying to call. He said, I need to talk to you about helping us get across the importance of critical path schedules on projects. I said, well, you know, I'm probably the right man for you. I certainly believe that. But I said, I'm extremely busy. But you know, maybe I can give you a name or two of some. He said, no, we want you. Your name has been given to us, and we want you. And I said, well, I'm not sure. Who is this, by the way? I said, who am I talking to? And he said, well, my name is so and so. And he said, I am the CIO for Microsoft. Well, that got my attention, believe me. And I said, okay, well, let's go back and discuss a little bit more. And he said, all I want you to do, I don't want you to train. This is not a training assignment. This is sort of a raise the enthusiasm level for Microsoft people responsible for executing critical path schedules. And we are implementing a new revised program to help them do that. So we want you to be sort of the, I'm going to use the term, cheerleader for the new process and get people excited and bought in. And I said, well, okay, how many people are we talking about? He said, we're going to invite 300 of Microsoft's finest project managers from throughout the world. And I said, wow, 300, that's a lot of really important people. I said, I'm not sure I'm prepared for that. I said, I think I'm going to pass. And then he mentioned the money, and I said, well, you know, we should continue our discussion a little longer. Well, ultimately, we did the deal. And so time came, I flew out to Tacoma, picked me up in a limo, took me to the Microsoft headquarters, and sure enough, there's about 300 people gathered together in this auditorium. And I started to make my presentation. The CIO was sitting down on the floor level to the side of me, listening in intently. And I was honest with him, because I want people to have expectations, but not over expectations. So I said, I want to make sure I set the expectation levels correctly. I'm here today to get you excited about the new program that's been created to help you continue to lead the market share in the world of critical path scheduling. And I said, so I'm basically here as a cheerleader. Okay. I mean, you know, just like the old days in school, college, or high school, the cheerleader would go out on the floor and they'd rah-rah and get you excited, get you pumped up, and then you run out on the field and play like crazy. That's called a cheerleader with talent. Now, a lot of cheerleaders do that, get the people hot, psyched up, and then they run out on the field and just get the snot knocked out of them. That's called a cheerleader with no talent. So we've got talent. We've got 300 of Microsoft's finest in here. So I want to do a calibration, and then I'll be ready to start. I said, of you 300 people, the cream of the crop, I'm told, how many of you use Microsoft Project to manage your projects? And I waited, and finally a few hands started. By the time we were done, out of the 300, I think I counted 39 hands. Okay, 39 hands. Well, once the count was done, the CIO stood and left the room, walked out, stage right, walked right out of that room. Wasn't going to stay for anything else. So as he got out the door and the door closed, I said, okay, now we can talk. I said, if you have the market share, if you control the market share, must be good. So let me ask you this: if you're not using Microsoft Project to manage your projects and you are the cream of the crop, what in the world are you using? And finally, one of the young ladies in the back raised her hand and said, Mr. Lambert, she said, I don't use it. I use Excel spreadsheets because Microsoft Project is too darn complicated. Okay. All right. So that's the impression that was left, is that a lot of this artificial intelligence support capacity on the surface looks too complex to integrate into my project management process. Please don't take that stand. Find help. Get someone who can help you come up to speed with the power that resides in the utilization of artificial intelligence. When I went to a company called Behringer Mannheim, since has been purchased by Roche Labs, to conduct a 3-year project that they wanted done in 18 months. They had already purchased a software package, and it wasn't Microsoft, but it was a good one for the schedules. But I had to learn how to use it to shrink the schedule, to get 3 years work done in 18 months. And so the first hire I made, and this is a company changing project. The first hire I made was what they called a database administrator. What I called is somebody who knows how to make a integrated logic network critical path schedule sing and dance. And he was the key to being able to do that. We got the project done in 18 months. PMI wrote it up as a miracle project and put it in the PEMNet. It was a real honor. Well, none of that would have been possible without artificial intelligence. And this was long before it became a buzzword. It was the idea that I could create meaningful decision support information using artificial means to create it. So keep that in mind as you look at what are some of the other tools and techniques that you have, some of the cost planning situations, the application of productivity rates, the application of cost rates, when the impact of when you take a subject matter expert at SME and suddenly instead of a SME, you end up with a SMO, which is a subject matter zero, that has an impact on your project. Not only on the time because of the experience capability, but it's going to have an impact on the cost. It may go down, could go up. You have to understand, without artificial intelligence, This is a very painful process, applying these variables to a project plan. So you've got to arm yourself with the state-of-the-art capability, and that's artificial intelligence. But at the end of the day, you're the one that's going to look smart. You're going to make decisions, and you're going to make decisions. And I've had people ask me this: How did you know that? How did you know that that was going to happen? Well, I didn't know, but the artificial intelligence converted to actionable information, said there's a high probability of that occurring. And so I made it look like I was a genius by identifying that. You too can be a genius, or at least like me, look like one. I'm not a genius, but I look like one because I know how to utilize the capabilities that are inherent in project management. All right, next slide. I want to try to keep some time for some questions. I've seen some come in on the chat, but this is kind of a get to the real point here, and that is that if it was easy, I mean, come on, if it was easy, do you think they'd need geniuses that got high rates of salary and travel all over the world expounding the benefits of project management? No, if it was easy, they wouldn't call it work. Okay, so you've got to be willing to invest, intellectually invest in the idea of artificial intelligence, because when you properly invest, you will find that you are intimately collecting the kind of, I'm going to use a word that's probably the wrong word, the kind of data that machines, that automation can then manipulate and extrapolate and combine to create and produce and provide powerful levels of actionable information. So when you look at it, and I'm guilty of this. Now I'm going to be honest. I never try to leave the impression that I'm something I'm not. I am reluctant to dig. I mean, I'm 70, almost 75 years old. People, give me a break. I'm reluctant to spend inordinate amounts of time coming up to speed on some of the latest, greatest techniques, because I'm not out there using them. I'm not out there in the field. Now, I learn enough about all of these concepts to be what I call dangerous. I mean, I can have what looks like a relatively intelligent conversation, but when it comes to in detail application, I haven't dug into the details yet. But the fact of the matter is, I know they're there. I've seen people in organizations use them to the extent that projects are done 10 to 20 to 30% sooner utilizing AI than they would have without. And this project that I got done in 18 months, it should have been 3 years, that took an incredible amount of manipulation. In fact, let me tell you, so you don't think I'm kidding you. We worked on average, 205 people worked on average 14 hours a day, 7 days a week for 18 months. Now, if I had the opportunity to do that project again with the availability of artificial intelligence, we would have gotten it done in 18 months. We'd still get it done in 18 months, but we'd be working regular hours. We'd have weekends off. We'd have the ability to live a life, not just live a project. So if you want to have more time to spend with your family, you want to have more time to come to the U.S. and visit us here, then the use of artificial intelligence, it will enable you to do that. And this has no gender specificity. It has no educational requirement. Anyone who commits themselves to understanding and implementing artificial intelligence, it's there for the taking. It's there for the taking. So be wise. I mean, I've talked to enough of my friends in India now to know that the work ethic is amazing. That when you have an objective that needs to be done, you're going to spend whatever the heck time it takes to get that done. So if I can convince you that if you use artificial intelligence, you will reduce the amount of time it takes to deliver a high quality product, I mean, you'd listen to me, wouldn't you? You'd want to do that. And so that's my suggestion to you. That's why this Intersociety weekly webinar series is so important, because every single speaker you have is going to have their take on helping you be more effective in the world of project management. I'm no different. So this AI is one of the most potentially beneficial concepts that we've begun to use. Now, remember, clear back when IBM beat the chess champion of the world, that was a long time ago, okay? So it's come a long ways. And I've worked for IBM. I helped them implement project management in 1993. They didn't use artificial intelligence at that time, but I can assure you they're using it now, as is almost every successful major corporation in America. So that I want to kind of leave it there, because I think there are some questions that we may have. I'll gladly try to respond. I don't have all the answers to all the questions, but I'll surely answer the ones I do. So Chris and I want to give back to you and entertain. It looks like we have maybe 5-8 minutes or so before our hour is up. And I did notice on the chat, someone suggested that we maybe should have devoted more time to this topic. I'll leave that with y'all to decide. Certainly, could we have spent more time? Well, yes, absolutely. Of course we could. So I'll leave it to you for questions.
Thank you so much for that wonderful session, sir. It was great listening to you. We have received a query. Shall I read it out for you?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that. Sorry.
Sir, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, so we have received a query. I'll read out for you.
Okay.
Most of the project management decisions are context-based. AI needs huge volume of data to come out with the right decision for different contexts. Can AI understand the context to support the decision-making process?
Well, the easy answer to that is yes. The hard answer is it takes work, because each discipline, in addition to each project, but each discipline has variability in terms of what artificial intelligence is going to add value. So I think that's a call that project managers, decision makers have to make. And that means there could be some initial upfront testing or manipulation of information to see what adds value, what adds the most value to your ability to make decisions. I don't think there's a one size fits all. I think that's important to understand, because as you look at the various positions, and gosh knows there's dozens of them here in the States and as well as in India, I'm sure, that has slight variabilities in terms of what's important for that process. So as I said in the last slide, if it was easy, they wouldn't call it work. Are there any other questions you'd like to ask as we draw near to our time?
Yes, so we received one more query. Clearly, AI can improve PM significantly, but how is relevant information generated for different types of projects? How are the algorithms for AI created? And who creates the learning processes? And how can the learning be used across the project management spectrum?
Yeah, that's about 4 questions in one. It's a good one. I think you need to understand, as a person considering the use of AI, that the value of AI actually rests in the historical information that's used to create the basis from which we extrapolate to the future. In other words, if we haven't captured good, actionable post-project information and incorporated that into the to the projection model, then the use of the AI becomes somewhat suspect. And this goes for a lot of different kinds of applications. Now, does AI benefit from, does Agile benefit from AI? Well, let's put it this way. Everything will benefit from the appropriate use of AI, but because of the context of Agile, which does not look at a project from start clear until the finish, the project is planned in component pieces, and maybe we call it sprints, maybe we call it something else. So now we're looking at, how do I use AI on sprint by sprint by sprint? Well, again, if you're in the Agile business, you should have historical data that tells you what you thought was going to happen and then confirms what actually happened. So even in predictive methods, way back when we initially offered the first PMBOK back in 1996, we recognized this idea of planning too much detail in the future. And so we set aside a concept called we called it the planning packages. So people would identify detail out for some period of time, maybe it's 3 months, maybe it's 4. And then the out time frame are planning packages that are not created in inordinate detail, but yet in bigger packages that we reach out and pull in, very much like we finish a sprint and then we pull in information to set up the next one. So it's that application into the specificity of the approach that's going to make the difference. But it's always going to be based on the quality of your historical information.
Thank you, sir. The next question is from Francis Joseph. How can we cross-check the accuracy of decisions based on AI?
How can you what? I'm sorry, I missed that word.
How can we cross-check the accuracy of decisions based on AI?
Okay, that's a good question, because everybody cares about accuracy, right? If we can become accurate in project management, then life just got easier. Because I mean, if we're accurate, that means whatever we said it's going to be, that's what it's going to be. And so I got to spend a lot less time managing it. Well, we know that's not true. We know that accuracy is a relative term. And when you have anybody, I don't care if it's your boss, if it's your wife or husband, I don't care. You have anybody that tells you they want an accurate estimate, they have just admitted they don't get it. Because if estimates were accurate, we wouldn't call them estimates. We call them actuals. So what we can do is utilize what the actual was when we finished the project. And I will almost without question guarantee to you that 99 out of 100 projects will not achieve the same numbers they identified in the performance measurement baseline. Therefore, I want to learn from that. I want to become more realistic, not more accurate, because it's not going to be possible, but I do want to be more realistic in the estimates, because we use those to plan resource loads, to plan facilities, to plan equipment. So the more realistic those are, the more positive impact they have on the project.
So the next question is from Dr. Anand Panikar. When AI can create action, why limit its creation to actionable information?
Well, I mean, I use that term. Here's my reference point. If I'm going to go to trouble of being a project manager, if I'm going to go to the trouble of creating a performance measurement baseline, then anything that I do to measure, to project, to minimize impacts. Any of the actions that I take, I want to base them on realistic data, or let's call it information. That way I can have impacts on all parts of the project. Like as I referenced earlier with the critical path schedule, if a project manager over focuses on the critical path schedule, areas like resource distribution, cost expenditures, those kinds of equipment securing elements can actually slip by in the decision-making process while we're over focusing on the critical path. So we've got to understand that the term I like to use in this concept is I want to become holistic in the way I manage a project. I want to look at it up and down, sideways to sideways. So that way I'm covering all the elements that need to be addressed.
So there is one more query. I hope you don't mind answering.
No, not at all.
How can we use AI to anticipate hurdles and disputes in projects?
How to anticipate, what was the last part? I'm sorry.
Hurdles and disputes in projects.
Oh, well, this has gotten to be, we're starting to look at project management as a bigger part of the pie, if you will, because when we talk about business management, now oftentimes we're talking about contractual requirements. We're talking about missing commitments from a contractual standpoint. We're talking about arbitration and negotiation. And the best way to have that impact for your project is to anticipate those contractual challenges before they occur. In other words, initiate dialogue based on projecting the past into the future. I have found that I'm able to negotiate much more beneficial results by getting involved early and softening the impact of disconnects between myself and the contract people. Now, I've learned a lot about this because my daughter is an attorney and she does arbitration and negotiation. And so I've learned a lot from her. I learned how it's so important to positively engage with those folks before the problem becomes so big that we lose sight of potential resolution. So I think it adds a lot of value. We don't talk as much about business management as we do project management, but we have people doing a lot of work in that area right now. And so I think you'll see a lot of the marriage of business management with project management in the future.
Thank you so much, sir. I believe that's the end of the question and answer session. Now I invite Professor Nandan S. of IEEE KLS section to deliver the vote of thanks. Sir, please.
Yeah, thank you. A warm good day wishes to all ladies and gentlemen assembled here. So with great pleasure, we have concluded the 65th talk of the Intersociety weekly webinar series on the topic AI creates AI. Are you ready to use it? So it's been 65 weeks, means almost 1 year, 3 months since Harindra started this initiative of weekly webinar series in collaboration with a couple of professional organizations. So today's session on artificial intelligence creates actionable information. Are you ready to use it? Was very, very interesting. So let me come to my duty, which is to deliver the word of thanks. The speaker of the day, Dr. Lambert, who is a PMI Fellow and who is a founder of Project Management Professional PMP certification. So he's also the VP Knowledge Transfer of Roeder Consulting. So, in today's session, Dr. Lee explained the various aspects of project management, then data, its growth and significance, about project plan. And thanks for sharing some of your personal experiences as well. So, it was good to create, sparks in our mind regarding the potential impacts of AI on the various aspects of project management, and how to wisely use this AI in planning, risk management, so on and so forth. So it was really very, very interesting. So on behalf of all the partnering organizations, I would like to extend a very sincere thanks to Dr. Lee for spending your valuable time with us and for patiently answering all the questions. You shared a lot of information. Thank you so much, Dr. Lee, for spending your valuable time. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Very welcome.
Thank you. I also like to thank Harindral sir, who is the backbone of this initiative, for all the support he is extending towards the successful conduction of this weekly webinar series. Thank you, Harindral sir. I also like to thank Dr. Krishna Kumar, who is a constant support and who is a person who introduces today's speaker, such an experienced person. So thank you so much, Krishna Kumar sir, for your support.
Thank you so much.
I also thank Amina, Nikita, and all the technical volunteers who helped us to conduct this particular session wonderfully. So thank you so much, all the technical team and all the coordinators. Thank you all. Last but not the least, I would like to thank the participants here who actively participated, asking questions. I hope you enjoyed a lot. It was really interesting one. So thank you so much all. Hope to see you for the next event. So once again, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. As we have reached the end of today's section successfully, I'd like to announce the next session in our Intersociety weekly webinar series. On next Wednesday, 14 July 2021, we'll have our 66th talk series with Professor Prakash Upendra, Professor in Mechanical Engineering, Sri Chitra Tirunal College of Engineering, with the topic Future Automobiles, Low Emission and Zero Emission Vehicles from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. Attendees, kindly take a note on that and register for the session. Hope to see you all on next Wednesday. On behalf of the Intersociety weekly webinar series team, thank you from the bottom of our hearts for joining with us today on the 65th talk. Goodbye, and this is Amina signing off. The meeting is officially closed.
Thank you, Dr. Lee, for a great presentation from US. We are greatly honored by your presence and by your talk and by sharing your knowledge.
It was my honor. I'm glad to be here. I hope people got a lot of value out of it.
Yes.
Thank you, Nandan, for giving the great vote of thanks for our guest of honor. You have done a great job in a short notice. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Lee. And I'll be in touch with you with all the feedbacks and the details. Thank you so much.
Very good. Look forward to it. Have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you. See you again. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, the regular participants and the special participants this day also. Hope to see you next week for the next session. Another great talk.
See you next week.
Yeah, Professor Prakash Upendra on low emission vehicles. Have a great day. See you later next week. All the best to you.